Burnout and stress are all signs that something needs to change. That something is unique to each person. And it really does start with self-exploration, not running from how we feel so that we can learn from our experiences.
Welcome to our Happy Rainmakers video series where point one can make a difference. I'm joined today by Taryn Abrahams, who is the founder and president of Empowered Behavioral Services. Thank you so much for being with us today, Taryn.
I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So in our 6 pillars, the first and arguably most important pillar is care for yourself. A lot of lawyers are under constant stress. And we were talking about how, that could be an opportunity to use those stressors to develop some resilience. Can you explain that to us?
Well, I always say stress is there to teach us. It's there to guide us throughout our lives. And I know we don't look at stress like that. A lot of us look at stress as something that's just negative and unpleasant. And sometimes it is, right? But I think burnout and stress are all signs that something needs to change. That something is unique to each person. And it really does start with self-exploration. It starts with not running from how we feel, but really allowing ourselves to reflect so that we can learn from our experiences. I always say emotions are our guide in life. Sometimes they're pleasant and sometimes they're unpleasant, but they're there to teach us.
So a lot of our audience are, lawyers who are either in the beginning of their career and they're so worried about negative feedback. Maybe I made a mistake. It's people who are used to getting straight A's all through school. And this is the first time that hasn't been perfect. But all the way up to those managing partners of firms and big rainmakers who think that they've mastered it. And then a client says something or they lose a court case or the deal doesn't sign. What's the first step to trying to use that stress to build resilience?
Yeah, no, great question. And I always go back to my understanding of stress. If it's not stress that hurts us, it's our perception of stress that can have a negative impact. And so I always like to remind all of us in this life that we learn the most when things get hard. We learn the most when we get challenged. So I think we have to sort of redefine our definition of what perfect looks like and what happens when we make mistakes. I do quotes because I don't necessarily like the word mistake. It's got a very negative connotation. I sort of see them as learning opportunities. And so I think it's important for us to reframe our perception of those experiences and to really, this is important, to be very mindful of that conversation we have in our head to ourselves about the experience, because how we perceive it will determine how we feel about it. So it's about catching ourselves and really stopping ourselves and allowing ourselves to see the good in the opportunity.
I know that when I practice law and a lot of our listeners go through that spiral, somebody didn't like the brief that I wrote and I'm going to end up homeless. It all goes to, I'm definitely going to get fired because I'm going to get a bad review and I'll never get another job and I'm going to run out of my savings and no one will ever hire me again and I'm going to get evicted and I'm going to end up on the street. Sometimes it's a matter of just stopping the spiral and substituting it. What?
Our words have power. And so if we're hitting the alarm button when we experience something difficult, well, how can we be surprised that we feel like crap? Right? When you think about it, right? So, I think when we get faced with our harder times, it's very common, and this is where our fight or flight response comes in. We can thank our prehistoric ancestors for this, that, we experience fear. We have to sort of, and this is another tip, to quiet the primitive mind, that sometimes even though we feel fear, doesn't necessarily mean it warrants a fear response. That maybe it's, again, something to learn about ourselves. Whatever the fear or the concern is, it's always good to talk through it, because oftentimes we do find out that sometimes our feelings will get the best of us. And even though it might feel like that the fears are warranted, oftentimes when we expose our fears or we talk about it, we do sometimes find out that maybe it's a little bit irrational, or maybe we need to kind of do a little bit better with managing our internal dialogue, because maybe this isn't exactly what I thought it was, or maybe it's not as scary as I thought it was. But communication, honest communication, oftentimes will help sort of alleviate whatever that might be feeling. Or you might learn it's not the right firm for you. And sometimes that's where they need you, right? Is to kind of figure out maybe this isn't the right environment for me. Again, our feelings are there to guide us. Sometimes we're not in the right place.
Well, this is all very helpful, whether you're just beginning in your career as an attorney or you've reached a lot of success. Sometimes that self-talk gets in the way. So thank
Oh,
you so much, Taryn. I think we can all learn a lot from this video.
thank you so much.